Thank you so very much, Mrs. Oakley, for the wonderful talk. I'm sure everybody here appreciated very much your hints and tips, and your very storied life was a motivation for all of us who would like to become lifelong learners. My question actually is regarding the whole subject of MOOCs. Recently, a senior official at Udacity, which was responsible for the first nominally accepted MOOC, said that MOOCs are probably dead because they haven't caught up to the demands and the dynamics of the online age as much as its proponents first defended. So they're now saying that they're scrambling for new formats that would fit and answer the needs of students more properly. I would like to ask you if you think that assertion is correct, and if so, do you envision how we could tailor the educational experience better to suit the students in the digital media as opposed to, you know, a seminar room? And if so, how can we make a better use of the resources that computers and internet and multimedia allow us to employ into the educational experience? Thank you very much. I'm Bruno from the Business Co here at USP.
Thank you for your excellent question. I think first off, I need to point out that when the spokesperson from Udacity was making that statement about MOOCs being dead, keep in mind that all of their competitors are making something called MOOCs, right? So if you want to try to diminish what your competitors are doing, you just say, it's all dead. But the reality is that Coursera, for example, which is the largest of the online course providers, is now in the unicorn territory as far as funding. So it's valued around $1 billion. The investments alone tell you that MOOCs are not dead at all. In fact, they're thriving. They've gone from several hundred, maybe 5 years ago, to over 7,000 today. People they're vibrant, they're alive. In fact, Udacity itself has some fantastic cooperative ventures going on, for example, with Georgia Tech, that are just revolutionizing how education in computer science and data analytics is being conveyed worldwide. So I think that was a bit of hyperbole to sort of disenfranchise competitors. That's not in any way reflective of what's going on in the... There's big money in MOOCs, and I think part of that involves the fact that when you make education, great education available for many people, you have extraordinary economies of scale. In other words, you make great stuff available really cheaply, and people are noticing, investors are noticing that, and I think that's part of why there's so much interest in this. And if you go to Inside Higher Education and just type in Arshad Ahmed and Barbara Oakley, you'll see our rebuttal article to that particular statement and so forth. So Inside Higher Education. And I think that article went sort of viral, our article. So I think you'll see a good rebuttal that goes into far more detail.
Tá, trocar de lado, faz uma vez de cada lado. Próximo aqui.
Hi, Barbara. My name is Gustavo Belchior. Congratulations on your great talk. Really passionate. I am a biologist in biochemistry, and now I have a science communication company, and it is dedicated more towards bringing scientific knowledge to companies, which is sort of a different environment from traditional learning and teaching. So I'd like to ask you if you know any particular strategies for communicating science to more of a business or corporate environment, and also how do you see the future of science communication in the next maybe 20 or 25 30 years. Thank you.
So Another very good question. If you're able to come to tomorrow's 6-hour or so workshop, you'll get a lot of ideas about how I think the future will be changing in scientific communication. I think a lot of it involves videos are just awesome. They're a very compelling way that can grab a person from many different perspectives. From hearing, from seeing, you can almost feel like a wind rushing by as there's a special effect that does this kind of thing. And so it's a way of communicating ideas that's far more effective than simply through writing. And also, of course, if you're writing for a journal publication, you can't use things like metaphors. You'll get in trouble. Your reviewers will say, how dare you do this? But if you're doing a quick elevator version of what's going on in a paper, you can use videos and use these ideas to really quickly convey these ideas so that people can understand them very well. So I think the future, in a nutshell, I think the future of scientific communication will involve even more video, and there's lots of little tricks you can do to make your videos more compelling, more interesting, and metaphor, of course, is one of the best ways to reach people about difficult scientific ideas and make them very simple. So, for example, this idea of focused and diffuse modes, you'd be in your 3rd or 4th year of college, generally, to understand those ideas, yet you can explain them to a 10-year-old using some of these same approaches on a video, and you can get kids ahead a lot more quickly with what's going on. So those are just my thoughts on that.
Hello, my name is Eduardo. Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. It was quite interesting. My question is, you said in your presentation that you like to write books. When did you write your first book? How many books did you write? And about which topics?
Oh, do I have to answer that question? I think I've written, what, maybe 9 books now. I tend to write all over the place. So I wrote, my first book was about working on Soviet trawlers, so it was really hard to get it published because it involved all this drinking, right? And the publishers were like, oh, we can't seem to be, you know, promoting all this drinking. And it was like, it's what the Russians did. But anyway, I finally got that book published. And then I published this book. Okay, this is a totally tongue-in-cheek title. It's called Evil Genes, Why Rome Fell, Hitler Rose, Enron Failed, and My Sister Stole My Mother's Boyfriend. And so you're going to laugh at this, but I sat for about 6 years. Actually, my sister really did steal my mother's boyfriend. And I was wondering, why did she do this, right? Why do people do this kind of thing? So I thought, I want to really research why do people, sometimes they're nice and sometimes they're really mean. Not like psychopaths that are, you know, pretty much always mean, but like sometimes they're nice, but sometimes they're not. And I couldn't figure out, how do you research this? I mean, I can't go to PubMed and say, I'm going to type in mean, right? And I mean, nothing's going to come out for research. So I found out that this word malignant narcissism, this term, was often used to describe people who were sometimes kind of mean. And I found out that thousands and thousands of psychological studies had been published on this, and not a single one of them had a scientific foundation whatsoever. And I got really interested in what was going on in the field of psychology, that sort of part of it could go adrift, and all this stuff could be published with no foundation, really. I wrote that book about it, and it got great blurbs from very distinguished psychologists like Steven Pinker and very well-known psychiatrists. And it was hard because I spent 6 years, you know, who's going to read an engineer's takedown of what's going on in parts of the field of psychology. Well, it went to 40 publishers, and finally one little publisher picked it up. But it did really well because it was well researched. And then I got fascinated by why do, you know, not just why did people do mean things, but why did people do, you know, all the people who were following Hitler were not bad people, right? So why do good people do bad things? And so then I began researching the pathologies of altruism. Did a edited volume of that. Did a science, or just a popular book called Cold-Blooded Kindness, Neuro Quirks of a Cold-Blooded Killer, right? So just have written a lot of books about a lot of different topics. But the last one, I wrote about the serial killer. And you know what? It is not fun to write about serial killers or people who have the possibility of being, they're not nice people. And so I thought, you know, I should probably turn to something a little bit more lighthearted, interesting. And so I thought, you know, that student asked that question, how did you change your brain? And I thought, oh, I'll do a book about learning. And I didn't realize all the other previous work was relevant to that. So if you write about lots of different topics, they can all kind of build and come together in very, very interesting ways. And I think a lot of times I don't know what I'm thinking about something until I write about it. That's when I learn what I'm thinking. And other writers have said the same thing. So it's not like I love writing and I just got to do it. It's like I have to do it. You know, it's this compulsion, and sometimes it's wonderful, but other times it's just like, boy, that's just awful. And I have to rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it, but it can be wonderfully fulfilling when you find that it does work. So that's sort of my writing story in a nutshell.
Thanks.
Me. I'm terrified to talk in English, but I will try. My name is Ivy. I'm a veterinary student here at USP, and I write a text to make this question, but I will really try to get short. I want to talk about feelings when we are learning. And when I'm terrified of some subject I'm studying, I block that. And I can, even I stop and when I come back to focus mode, I block my mind and want to run away. In medical school, it is even worse. Maybe I can kill someone. So this method of get focused and give it some time. When I feel fear, it doesn't work. And we can build tools to help students to avoid this fear of subjects and when we are studying and get more self-confident. Maybe games can do this?
I think you have to be a little bit careful with games. Sometimes here's what happens. This is an excellent question. I go to STEM conferences, science, technology, engineering, and math. And there are presentations everywhere about how to make STEM more entertaining, more fun. You know. And that is a little bit like, I'm going to teach you how to play guitar by having you play air guitar all the time. I mean, you feel great when you're doing it. You love it. But you're not really learning how to play the guitar. A lot of times when what happens is students go through their educational system, and at the lower levels, at least in the United States, there's a lot of emphasis put on the idea of making science and math fun. So what happens is they get to college and they hit calculus, and all of a sudden it's the math and science death march. Everybody just falls off, right? Because it's not fun anymore. And we've taught them that math and science needs to be fun. So I think it's a little, that it is better to teach in this way. When you're first riding a bicycle, you're learning how to ride a bicycle. It's hard. You got to pay attention to this. Oh, well, you fall over. It hurts. There's pain involved in learning almost anything that's new, and especially if it's a little hard. But as an adult, or as an older kid, you can just jump on your bike and fly once you've got those basic skills. So learning in math and science is a lot like that. There's a tough entry level, and if you just kind of help students do it, you get through it, just like scales, learning how to play scales. Kids never have a problem. If they want to learn how to play a musical instrument, they're not going to be upset if you say, well, you got to practice and use some scales, because they know that that's involved. But we don't tell them the equivalent of that in doing math and science. We're always kind of like, if you're not enjoying it, it's not your passion, so you should do something different. When actually, it's just like anything. There are parts where you have to practice and then the joy comes. So I think that many times we're trying a little too hard to make everything all really fun and nice. But actually, for example, the Chinese look at what we do in the West as far as math, and it's a joke. Because they know that it involves a little bit of effort and learning some things really well through practice. And I think just a little more of that is okay for us to be doing as well. Those are just my thoughts on those. So really tough question and a good question.
Hi, my name is Luis. I study geology here in USP. And first of all, I want to thank you. The presentation was really good and it helped me out some things to study. And I want to know about some other ways, other methods of studying, like acupuncture or electrode methods that maybe make faster the way to learn. Any knowledge of that?
So is the question then, are there faster ways to learn?
Yeah.
Learning involves growing those new neural connections. And it takes work. There's no magic formula, much as we would like it. Sometimes there's ways to become intently focused on things that can help. Using a little bit intent focus with breaks helps. So all the kinds of things that I've spoken about today are ways to help you get intently focused when you are focusing, because that helps those little dendritic spines emerge and make those connections better. But we don't have a magic formula yet that will help those spines grow more quickly. Except for exercise will help with that. Right now it's still more a question of turning your attention to it and really working as hard as you can. But it's not necessarily going to make, if you want to learn calculus super fast, it's probably not going to be as fast as you would want it to be. We don't have the tools yet to make that happen.
So I think just one more question.
Hello, here. Hello, I'm Ariane. I study electrical engineer at Poly here. And I'm part of a group and we study artificial intelligence. And I would like to know if you see some kind of connections about machine learning and our human learning, and how can we use machine learning, I don't know, to improve our human learning?
I think that machine learning will help make dramatic improvements in our regular human learning. let's say you're learning statistics. Right now, you turn in a homework set, and maybe it gets graded, and you get it back in another week or so. Wouldn't it be much better if you got your results instantly? If you took a test instantly, or turned your homework in, and you learned immediately what you had done wrong, and then you were presented with something that gave you the same question in slightly different format to really make sure that you got that idea. This kind of adaptive learning is coming. It's going to change and adapt to your weaknesses and help build them into strengths. So, this isn't a terrible thing for teachers. It's a wonderful thing for teachers, because what's one of the worst burdens we have? It's grading. Grading can be really, really time-consuming, tedious, and boring. And if you've got some grading help that can allow students to, get instant feedback and learn very quickly where they've made the mistakes, I think that's an awesome thing, and that is definitely coming. It's not here yet. I wish it were here, because it would help the students in my classes. A big thing in this is an important point is we often think that students, if you flunk a test, that student is a little demoralized, and you flunk several tests and you just think, I can't do this subject. What if we had it so that you could take that test over and over again? And it changed, and it helped you to actually learn the material. And so then we didn't have this on-off of, no soup for you. You didn't learn this material, so you can't pass this class. Instead, you could just learn through the testing, and that's a great way to learn. Research has shown that. So I think we have a bright, bright future ahead with applying artificial intelligence to learning. And that's not good. That's going to help not only students, but also teachers to relieve some of the burden of grading.
Sadly, we're out of time, but I want to really thank everyone for coming. This has been a great meeting. And one important notice is that Barb is going to be with us tomorrow as well, hosting a workshop that's going to go from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it would be excellent if you're available to join. She's going to give us very interesting insight on how to build MOOCs and how to learn to use tools for better online learning and teaching. So a round of applause for Barb again, and thank you everyone for coming.